Jay-Z has been telling one story with his public image, but when you line up the real timeline, the deleted evidence, and the industry fallout already happening behind the scenes, it stops looking like normal business and starts looking like a controlled exit strategy from Roc Nation itself. In the last few years, we've watched him cash out of liquor, restructure his label, and quietly shift his power base into funds and partnerships that live outside the Roc Nation brand. The real timeline shows money moving one way, public statements saying another, and then a wave of rumors that Roc Nation is not the safe empire people think it is. When you add in the deleted evidence, scrubbed posts, pulled press language, and deals that suddenly get described as mutual separations, the question becomes simple. Is Jay-Z quietly selling everything because he sees an industry fallout coming for Roc Nation before anyone else does? Now, before we get into the timeline they're trying to scrub, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. The mainstream media is currently being paid to bury this story, but I'm showing you the receipts they deleted and the context they're too scared to post. Don't let the PR spin win. Join the drip right now. So let's start with what we can actually track, because once you follow the money, Jay-Z's moves stop looking random. For years, Roc Nation has been pitched as the ultimate culture conglomerate: music, sports, publishing, production, and management under one umbrella. According to reports about his broader empire, Jay-Z's pattern has always been the same: build equity, inflate the value, then sell stakes to corporate giants for massive exits, like he did with Armand de Brignac and Doucet. That was the first clue. This is not a man who gets emotionally attached to an asset. If a brand hits a certain valuation, or if the risk starts to outweigh the upside, he gets out. The question now is whether Roc Nation itself, especially the label and management side, is entering that danger zone. Look at how Roc Nation has been quietly restructured. In 2024, Roc Nation and its distribution arm, Equity Distribution, were merged into a new entity called Roc Nation Distribution, with a big public spin about empowering independent artists and letting them keep their masters. On the surface, that reads like an artist-friendly move, but if you read it like an investor, it looks a lot like consolidating overlapping divisions, cutting extra cost centers, and streamlining the business before a pivot. When a company merges internal units and starts changing how it takes revenue from clients, it's often because the old model has hit a ceiling or become too risky. That's our first piece of visual proof in this story: that press announcement of the merger, the new name, and the repositioning. The timestamp on that announcement sits right between earlier years of aggressive growth and a new phase where Jay-Z is putting more of his energy into venture capital and financial products, not traditional label activity. On one hand, you could argue this is just a textbook evolution. The music industry is changing, independent artists want more control, and it makes sense for Roc Nation to adapt before they get left behind. On the other hand, the timing and the framing feel a little too convenient for a brand that's also facing constant whispers about lawsuits, unhappy athletes, and artists who quietly leave with no explanation. When you combine that with Jay-Z outside moves, the story stops making sense as a simple, "we're just modernizing" narrative. It starts to look like he's reducing Roc Nation's exposure while building new vehicles where the real money will live. Because at the same time Roc Nation is transforming, Jay-Z is loading up on vehicles that exist completely outside the Roc Nation risk zone. His venture capital arm, Marcy Venture Partners, didn't just keep investing, it merged with Pendulum Opportunities to form a new private equity-style entity managing around $900 million in assets under the name Marcy Penn Capital Partners. That's not a side hustle, that's a second empire. The mission is to back consumer and culture-leading companies with serious capital, and they're in the middle of raising a $250 million fund with over $100 million already locked in. Translation: Jay-Z is moving from being the guy who owns the label to being the guy who owns the capital that owns everything else. And here's where the real timeline gets uncomfortable. Before the Roc Nation restructuring and before this new Marcy Penn super fund, Jay-Z's wealth narrative was deeply tied to brands like Tidal, Armand de Brignac, Doucet, and of course, Roc Nation. As those exits went through and the liquor deals got cashed out, he didn't double down on Roc Nation. Instead, he built and scaled a venture firm that can survive even if Roc Nation vanished tomorrow. That is not the move of someone who thinks his entertainment company is a forever safe bet. That's the move of someone future-proofing his wealth against fallout that the public hasn't fully seen yet. But that's not even the worst part. While the official press releases talk about empowering artists and new opportunities, social media and commentary spaces have been buzzing with a darker angle: the possibility of regulatory pressure and legal heat around Roc Nation's operations, especially in sports and management. Some online videos even claim that investigators and officials have been urged to seize or examine assets linked to Roc Nation affiliates, describing a scenario where law enforcement and federal agencies could start peeling back how some of these deals were structured. Now, to be clear, a lot of that is rumor, speculation, and clickbait from other channels. But even unconfirmed chatter like that shifts perception. If you are Jay-Z and you're hearing even whispers of possible probes or of partners coming under scrutiny, what do? You quietly separate your long-term wealth from the most exposed brand. This is where the deleted evidence comes in. And no, we're not talking about some magical hacked file. We're talking about the soft deletes, language that disappears from press materials, executive names that quietly vanish from websites, and initiatives that get announced and then never mentioned again. When Roc Nation pushes a big new project and then goes silent, while Jay-Z's energy shows up around a totally different financial venture, that is a story. When an executive like Jay Brown, who built Roc Nation with him, is now more prominently associated with the venture side and new financial products like music royalty trading, that is another signal that the real engine has moved. At the same time, Roc Nation is partnering with fintech firms like Musical to launch platforms where fans can buy fractional music royalties as investment assets. On its face, this sounds like innovation, giving fans access to royalty streams and turning songs into a new asset class. But step back and think about the pattern. Jay-Z is increasingly in the business of packaging, financializing, and trading the very culture he used to only manage. If you can turn catalogs, rights, and royalties into shares, you can sell them, securitize them, and cash out of pieces of the culture while still maintaining some control. This kind of financial innovation is powerful, but it also introduces more regulatory risk. So again, it makes sense that the personal fortune and power center are being relocated into structures like venture funds and private capital firms that sit one layer above the direct entertainment brand. On one hand, this could just be the next logical step for a billionaire who's already conquered music. On the other hand, the messiness, the speculation about probes, the sudden restructurings, the rumors around Roc Nation's sports clients, and the noise about behind-the-scenes disputes feels more like real chaos than a clean legacy play. That's why so many people are asking whether Jay-Z is selling everything to protect himself from the industry fallout that might be coming if even some of these allegations and pressures become real cases or major scandals. Let's also remember that this wouldn't be the first time Jay-Z sold out of a beloved asset when the strategic move demanded it. He once sold his small stake in the Brooklyn Nets so he could become an agent, breaking ties with a team he publicly helped usher into a new era in Brooklyn. That sale was tiny in dollar terms, but massive in symbolism. It told you everything you needed to know about how he thinks. No emotional attachment, just strategic positioning. Years later, we see the same mindset at scale. Spirits brands, streaming, distribution, and now whole segments of his entertainment empire are things he will absolutely sell, restructure, or demote if it allows him to step into a bigger lane. And that's where the midpoint twist hits. What if the real play here is that Roc Nation was never meant to be the final empire? Roc Nation might have been the scaffolding, the public-facing brand that put him in rooms with athletes, CEOs, hedge funds, and tech founders. But once those doors opened and the Rolodex filled up, the smart move was always going to be to build a capital vehicle that could operate far beyond the limits of a label or management company. That's exactly what Marcy Venture Partners and now Marcy Penn Capital Partners look like. And if the industry around Roc Nation is getting noisier, riskier, and more litigious, that only speeds up the timeline. On one side of this story, you have PR spin, Jay-Z expanding, innovating, and empowering Roc Nation, evolving instead of shrinking. On the other hand, you have a very simple pattern: high-risk, high-visibility assets getting streamlined while the long-term money is packed into harder-to-touch investment structures. It's not proof of guilt, it's not proof that Roc Nation is about to collapse, but it absolutely looks like someone who understands that the era of old-school music conglomerates might be ending and that the next few years could bring a messy industry fallout for companies that didn't adjust fast enough. And that's where the story stops being clickbait and starts being a blueprint. Whether you love Jay-Z or can't stand him, the moves are consistent. Cash out of brands once they've done their job, turn cultural influence into ownership stakes, merge, restructure, and rebrand your companies to match new market realities. Then, when the whispers start about probes, lawsuits, and regulatory interests, you quietly shift the center of your fortune into funds and structures that will live even if the entertainment brand takes a hit.